Fala pessoal do SharpCast, muito bom dia, muito boa tarde ou boa noite. Eu e o Divinão estamos aqui mais uma vez, para mais um podcast junto com vocês. Estamos chegando no nosso 12º podcast, já completamos uma quantidade bem legal aí. E como vocês já ficaram sabendo no último podcast, o 11º, a gente está com um novo parceiro, a Betbra. A Betbra que é uma book que funciona como meio que o espelho ali da Pinnacle e também é uma exchange que funciona como o espelho da Betfair. Ou seja, você tem acesso ali a duas books em uma só plataforma. E lá você vai encontrar as melhores odds do mercado, além de contar com uma interface muito amigável com diversas funcionalidades, né, Divinão?
É isso mesmo, a gente já usa a Betbra na Bifront há bastante tempo já. Tanto o Sportsbook dela, que é o espelho da Pinnacle, como o Exchange, igual o Luquinha falou, que é o da Betfair, né? A gente está contando com o apoio deles agora para trazer o podcast aqui para vocês, com muita informação. O legal de apostar lá na Betbra é que você tem diversas funcionalidades que você não encontra nas books comuns, né? Você consegue ver o gráfico de movimentação de odds, você consegue programar bets para pegar no ao vivo quando você não estiver no computador, por exemplo. E eles lançaram agora, recentemente, o planejamento automático de entradas. E tem os meios de depósito que a gente gosta bastante, que é o meio de depósito via cripto, né? Depósito e saque via cripto, o SDT. Então, pra gente aqui, ela é só vantagem.
É isso aí, show de bola. Então, se você curtiu, ficou interessado, quer conhecer um pouco mais da Betbra, a gente vai deixar o link aqui embaixo na nossa descrição para vocês clicarem e serem direcionados direto para lá. Ou se vocês quiserem escanear o QR Code em algum lugar aqui da tela, fiquem à vontade para isso, fechou?
Já que fizemos nosso merchan aqui agora, vamos trazer o nosso convidado do dia, o Porter. Ele é um apostador profissional e também é responsável por um betting group, que aqui no Brasil a gente chama de sindicatos, né? Hi Porter, how are you doing?
Hi, thank you guys for having me on.
It's our pleasure here. Let's get started in the beginning of all. How do you start in sports betting?
So I've been doing something with kind of betting for the last 15 plus years. I started off as a poker pro, and then I did some AP slot play. I played DFS, and then I sort of finally found my nesting or maybe final resting spot in sports betting. So I kind of always was an advantage player through, my whole life. And then my background is in math and finance, so they kind of go hand in hand.
So you started betting, and later you built this betting group, right?
Yep, it took me longer than I would have liked, but yep, eventually it grew into something, that flourishes.
So what are the advantages of building a betting group instead of being a solo advantage player? Let's put it this way. A common better in partnership with a betting group such as yours. How do the ecosystem works?
Right. So eventually, if you're successful enough and you're doing a good job in actually winning, that it becomes impossible for one man to just operate so many accounts and so many components of sports betting, because in reality, winning betting at scale isn't just coming in and trying to click winners. I always like to make the joke that winning is actually when you collect, not when you actually win the bet. So over time, when you're scaling, it's just unreasonable that one person is able to do everything. At one point, I was working 80 to 100 hours a week, and you just kind of reach a natural peak of how much work you can do. And then if you can figure out how it's financially beneficial to you, you expand and you hire employees, you build out your base business, and eventually you just need more people.
As in the disadvantage, let's put this way, the bad thing of a betting group is kind of to stake the bets, right? It's more harder than to stake it on your own bank.
Sort of, but in reality, if you're doing partnerships where you take over the account, you really are doing it. When I say on your own, I mean your team is doing it on their own. So once it's in-house, I wouldn't say that's really a disadvantage. Where a disadvantage might happen, and I'm pretty sure it's occurring out there, is some groups grow too big, hire too many people, And then all of a sudden you need to get so much down that you're not actually able to operate in a way that the market dictates. So naturally, how sports betting works is some edge disappears, some edge shrinks, and you have to make adjustments. And if you're not making those adjustments, or you have too many employees and too many workers, even if you know what adjustments you need to make, it becomes very difficult to make them unless you plan to get rid of some of the people who work for you. And I would say in my home base operation, those people kind of become friends over time. So it's pretty hard to just tell someone, hey, you're out. It's not really an employee. They more like you're a team, like almost a family.
Yes, because you actually pass more time with them, as such as your family or old friends or something like that, right? You need to be talking all day long about the bets, about the bookies, about the odds and everything like that.
Yeah, basically all day. I mean, communication. Again, real sports betting winning at scale isn't just trying to find plays, clicking buttons, and winning the bet. There's so many more components to that. And one of them is the teamwork communication that you're talking about that allows something like that to succeed. I think a lot of people in this industry sort of downplay the like other components that are required to make you successful. So like, the networking, the, having a good team. Of course, it's very important to have sharp stuff to bet and win. But just like any other business, you need everything kind of functioning on all cylinders to really make it work. Again, this is just when you're referring to something at scale. When you work alone, there's X amount of size you can probably win. And if you think you can win more by scaling and increasing your team, then you do so.
When
Okay.
you reach in a certain level, you have to think more like a company as just a bettor, right? So because of
Exactly.
that, you have to think about process and a lot of different stuff, tax, and really different things that appear and at this way, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just so many little things, even when it comes to tech, getting alerts, the way you process information. Sometimes it's complicated to explain in a pod, but I would say sometimes we take a bet that it's not often that you'll get this, but sometimes there's even a bet where we sort of feel questionable about the bet, but we feel that it's more important to follow the process, looking at the big picture and consistently having this process in place. That sometimes you make a bet where I'm not sure this is good, but it follows the process. And you know that as long as you follow the process and you're thinking about the big picture, that things will work out. That's not to say that the process doesn't change over time and you need to be adapting in this industry. But I would say that people greatly undervalue the process of coming to a bet and overly amplified. My model says this, click the button, it's that simple.
Nice. And as you are talking about this model and stuff like that, you as a bettor, you think about to make a bet. You think more using data, or you have been using a model more? How do I say that?
Information model.
Using information. You have a lot of people bringing data for a company or bringing information. I put on this way.
So when I first started, and probably a reason why I didn't grow fast enough, was I was extremely dedicated or believed in the bottom up betting process where you have your model, you tweak your model, over time you prove that, this model works. You just bet and you win. And I realized later on that was very simplistic thinking, when in reality, once I always kind of did this for, making money and profit, but I didn't really know what that meant. And the moment I had a firmer grasp of what that meant, I realized that actually every component in sports betting has value if it's every component in sports betting has value if it's turning a profit. So, top down, getting information about news, sometimes moving for other people that are winners. There's value, and that's a way to expand your operation. And really, if you're not multifaceted and doing everything, I still believe the bottom up should be the primary component of a business. Don't get me wrong. But today, I'm no longer opposed to having multiple different avenues of being able to win.
Yes,
Nice.
because you can do on the top down, as you mentioned it. You can think about arbitrage, about chasing on streams or chasing odds from a big sharp bookie or something like that too.
Yes. So my obligation at the end of the day is basically to two people, myself and the partners that bring me accounts. So while I wouldn't arb my, account holders, I would be willing to win in ways other than bottom up. So if there are other avenues to churning a profit, I'm all for it.
Nice. And you talk a little bit about that, but just to focus on this, the vast majority of the betting group and the bettors focus on having an edge and underestimate building a structure that allows for scalability. In your opinion, how important is this structure and the longevity of a bettor?
Right. So I think it's really important that a sports betting operation is run like a company. So if you want to succeed, the things that succeed in sports betting at scale are the same things that succeed in other operations at scale. It can be any entrepreneurial business. There's just multiple facets and components that you really need to fill through. And in all honesty, it's kind of a snowball effect. So as you grow, it's kind of like pushing a big snowball up a hill. It's hard to grow and grow and grow. And if you start seeing a decline, a serious decline at some point, it's kind of like a snowball rolling down the hill. It picks up speed. So I would say in reality, when you're not gaining market share and understanding networking and growing, there is someone new out there or another group out there that's probably taking your share of of the business. So it's kind of this, most people, I'd say other groups, syndicates, they're more like frenemies, even though sometimes they might have good information. But in reality, it's basically a 24/7 job of trying to grow. And without that growth, the value of the winning begins to diminish over time. So you'll notice that today the structure and importance has shifted from the sharp to the networker. You're starting to see a lot more people in this industry able to win. And that's really because, at least in America, I believe it's become more socially acceptable because, the laws have changed. And yet they're not different. They haven't, changed California and many other major states. So I still see a lot of opportunity for growth. And with this growth, you're going to get a lot more individuals from universities where it now becomes acceptable to say, hey, mom, dad, I'm working for, and then some, sportsbook company or, some platform. And this type of growth puts a lot more skilled individuals in the industry. So you're going to see a saturation, especially over time, of individuals able to win. And that, unfortunately, in my mind, has shifted the power to the individual that's able to network and grow. And those things all tie to the longevity of your business.
I just want to do a parenthesis here because I guess that will be some expectors for us that don't know what top down and bottom up are. The top down are market models, let's put this way, like arbitrage and chasing and information bets too. And bottom up are models, purely more models, let's put this way. When you persiflate the game from the beginning, the zero. Okay.
Yep.
What's your view in market efficiency in smallest market, as I say, props on NBA or anytime score goal on soccer? What metrics do you recommend using to evaluate a bettor's ability in this kind of small markets?
Yeah, so I'm actually going to give a slightly different answer than I've said before. I used to kind of bash a lot on the tout selling picks, but in reality, the market has changed. So I would say definitely 5, 6, 7 years ago, a lot of old school guys will think that if you're good, the only way that a line will move is if you're actually betting volume, which comes with being respected and growing. I would say that today, somehow, just in the insanity of the world that we live in, there are tons of touts out there with hundreds of thousands of followers who are not winners and are moving the line. So you would say that today it seems like the market is inefficient, but that's actually not true, because now what's happening is there's a little bit more liquidity than what there used to be. So I would say, in at least for the American markets, but soccer is a good example too of that anytime goal, where the closing line of the market has become, and I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, has become more efficient than at least it used to be. And I would say the value of the tout has greatly increased, or even a non-tout, a company that releases projections. When you disagree with their projections, or when you disagree with the tout, which is a lot easier to do than most model-based companies, you actually have incredible value on a play, because they're going to push a line in a direction that you disagree with, and you're actually able to get some of your absolute best plays, besides injury news, some of your absolute best plays when a very large tout or a company that releases lines releases a play that you disagree with. So I used to sort of be oblivious to what was happening out there in the Twitterverse, but I all of a sudden realized that actually these are some of the absolute best opportunities. So if your average ROI might be 7, 8% in props, these moments where you disagree with them, if over time you've sort of determined that you're an actual winner, it's very hard for a beginner to make this decision. And sometimes I find it hard to believe that, let's say you're betting NBA sides and totals. In reality, I'd say most people are doing 3, 4, 5 bets a day. In my operation, we're doing 60 plus bets a day. So you'll reach the long run a lot quicker. So to me, well, I don't care what CLV. I feel like a lot of times in these markets, we're pushing the CLV. So sometimes I look and I'm like, well, if I just imaginarily wrote this line that I wanted to bet on a napkin, the line probably wouldn't have moved. Yet I like the play equally as much as if I actually bet it. But I would say that today, oh, right. So back to the sides and totals guys, I find it hard for them to really know, besides CLV, they use that as a crux to determine if they're winners or not. But to me, in reality, with the amount of volume that we put in, we've reached the long run. So I don't personally care if the market disagrees with me. To me, it just, unless there's an injury or something, to me, it's just another opportunity to bet more. So I personally, while we get CLV a really high percentage of the time, I mean, it's absurd. It's like 98 or 99% of the time. The reality is, I feel that it's irrelevant for my operation. It's only relevant to me when someone else is moving a line. And even if the line holds, they're getting this perceived value on the play. If I disagree, those are some of my biggest edges going the other way.
That's a good perspective, because most people we talk and listen are saying the opposite of this, and but when you talk, it was a really good point to
Look,
see.
I'm not a CLV denier. I do believe that CLV in markets, even small markets, has some importance. The question is who you're asking this question to. So I value the market, but not if I'm moving the market. And it doesn't scare me anymore because we've reached the long run, because in this market, we bet so many plays a day that we've actualized the long-term results, which is why you see people who bet larger markets, but bet fewer plays, rely on the CLV as a crux. And in those larger markets, they tend to be more efficient. That's true also.
But you use any other metric to evaluate your bets or something like that, or just the profit? Let's put on the way.
Look, so at the end of so that's a double-edged sword. So yes, we look at our ROI. So I know my ROI for the last half decade, but two, that's sort of a vanity stat. In reality, I try to maintain a high ROI, not for myself. I do this because it helps in partnerships. most of the people reaching out, they're not that experienced in variance. They don't truly understand the emotional swings that you'll experience if you're only winning at a 2 or 3% ROI clip. In reality, the largest groups in the world, they would love to win at 1% ROI, because really what that means is they're getting larger volume in and actually making more money in the long run. So I can artificially kind of, there's a certain cap to how high you can go. But technically, if I waited around and tried to just beat some major news, I could have a 25% ROI. Or, there might be broken lines and you'd have a 25% ROI. But who cares, because you're getting one play a day like that or 2 plays a day like that. So really the ROI that we kind of hit, to me, is more like a psychological number of what the majority of partners will feel is a good betting partnership. Even though I don't personally believe that maximizes net dollars as a whole, it maximizes net dollars because that's what the psychological feeling, or I have a lot of partners, so I've sort of been able to gauge what number. They don't know the number, but they're able to gauge. I'm able to gauge what number they are emotionally vested in giving me more accounts, not going through tumultuous downswings. We might not have the greatest peaks because we're taking less risk, but we don't have terrible valleys either.
Nice.
Understood. And the ROI, the ROI that we say here, it means on a on a low variance too, right? If on the ROI of 1%, I guess it's more lower, this kind of
Oh no,
changing of money.
ROI means return on investment. So for every
Yeah.
$100, a 1% would be a return of 101. That's going to actually be your greatest variance, because it means you have the smallest amount of edge betting into something. While a really high ROI means you have a very large edge. But as you only take plays that have very large edges, you're leaving money on the table with smaller edge plays, which now increases your variance. So each individual has their own risk tolerance to how big of a swing they would handle. I don't believe that I could take my, a new partner and give him 5 losing weeks, and he's going to come back motivated to bring me accounts. So I try to eliminate, at least at the beginning of a relationship. Once a partner is more experienced and I feel like they're ready for more variance, I change the business model a little bit. But to start off, my goal is basically to make as smooth of a ride as possible until the partner builds trust and comfort.
Yes. And you build a trust way with that too. He will get experience and everything. Besides the time will pass too.
Right.
So
Look, a partnership is 2 ways. When someone brings it
yes,
out, it's not a healthy mindset. It actually won't work in the long run if the individual just thinks he's dropping something off and the rest is easy. No, each side of the operation has a job. So the partner takes care of dealing with the, collecting, making sure that the place you're betting is legitimate. And my obligation to that partner is to generate long-term winning for him. So each person has a role. It's not just this very simple, here's the info, take it, and kumbaya. No, there's work on both ends.
yes, and it's the structure we mentioned before too. You needed this kind of two-way work. Let's put it this way.
Yep.
So, Porter, normally small markets have much lower limits compared to other markets, as you meant, NBA props and against NBA totals or spreads, right? What strategy can betting groups use to escape these limitations? So when the bookie kicks you out,
Right. So that's the $64,000 question. In
yes,
reality, networking today has become the most powerful tool in an operation that wins, and maybe not necessarily the winning, which multiple people can sort of provide, based off your needs, low ROI, high ROI. In reality, the really hard, what most people do, and this is what leads to a lot of stiffing in the industry, is they're basically taking the easy way out. They have a hard time finding accounts. They have some book that tells them, go ahead, bet whatever limits and whatever size you want. They run up huge figures, and then all of a sudden they're surprised when they get stiff. That's the example of putting all your eggs in one basket. when in reality, that's just trying to take the easy way out, and it leads to a lot of pain. Where instead of running, let's just use a random number, $50,000 in profit, if you ran that up against 50 books and you got stiffed in 1-2 spots, you would have a much easier experience in this industry. So it's hard to really just, again, it's a lot of people think it's some quick get rich scheme or something easy, and they find one thing that they're comfortable with, maybe one place where they're allowed to bet a lot, and they take the easy way out and they run it up there and they have issues. Where in reality, you just need to nonstop be, doing, Twitter, going to bars, poker games. Look, a ton of white collar jobs, they talk about, hey, how did the Chiefs do today? And, if you're starting to hear someone spark a conversation, to succeed in this industry, it's changed. You can't be embarrassed to go up and start a conversation with them. Ask them, hey, are you betting this anywhere? What's going on? So a lot of the people that have the skill sets to succeed in winning bets tend to not be great at the networking communication, component of this industry. And a lot of times that's where, like I kind of talked about before, partnerships need to form. You might be the individual that's very skilled at betting. You just need to network 1 time or 2 times with the guy who's really good at networking 50 times, 100 times. So even for the most experienced modeler, bottom up guy, they really need to spend a couple moments figuring out how to network. I mean, it takes thousands of hours to build a good model. It takes thousands of hours to understand how to read the board top down. Why would it not take thousands of hours of networking to achieve the same result? If you're putting in 2,000 hours a year at, the betting and 2,000 minutes a year at the networking, there is a clear imbalance in what you're doing. So it's hard to tell an individual how to get the accounts other than you need to spend the time attempting to do so and learning to do so. It's just like any other skill, you need to work on it. And most of that has to do with being open-minded enough to just receiving a lot of DMs, talking to a lot of people, explaining a lot of things, and eventually these things pan out. You do eventually start to build a radar with the guys that are very risky to work with. I'm in Discord channels sometimes and I see someone, they DM me, and in 10 seconds I look at the message they're sending. I'm like, this person's a scammer. It's very obvious. And then 3 months later, I see half the chat filled with people, this guy scammed me. So I tend to think to myself that people are looking for the easy way out. They see something quick and they just take it. And I would say a lot of people do get the gut feeling that something is wrong. Something at times it's just really obvious. And they just say one line, that doesn't make sense. And when they say that line, it should sound alarms. And a lot of people get those alarms and suppress them and decide to take the chance. And then they're surprised that something wrong happens. So I would say in a year, you should take, and I hope this doesn't open me up to more adverse situations, but I would say somewhere between 5 to 10% a year is what you should be willing to accept in stiffs. And when I first started, the thing that held me back the most was I was overly careful, and I was trying to keep that number as close to humanly possible as 0. So after your bankroll has grown and you have personally grown, taking a few shots at partnerships that are somewhat risky makes sense. But that doesn't make sense to do at the beginning of your journey.
Nice. And nowadays we have so many possibilities to networking, right? If you think about 10, 15 years ago, it's more hard than today, because today we have Telegram, we have LinkedIn, we have a lot of social networks that we can look for different partners and all around the world. So it's way easier than ever.
I would definitely say though that many times individuals message, and they're mostly talking about these big legal accounts, FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars, Bet365. I would just caution the individual to think, if you're able to open the account and this individual is a networker, those are the one places where the individual is most like me, a group, is least likely to see value, because opening an account on Bovada, I have 30 friends that we can open accounts on Bovada. They call it bearding. But in reality, where the real value is what's called the PPH market. It's somewhere where I don't have the ability to go and open an account. And if an individual does know someone that operates, and PPH means it's basically playing against a local bookie, and legal accounts is DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars. It's just terminology used in the industry. And I would say that example of the individual looking to give these FanDuels, DraftKings, Bet365, it's one of two things. They don't understand the industry that well, or they don't understand where the most value to be given to someone who is interested in networking exists. And it's just at scale, real sports betting requires this PPH local book betting. And yes, you can bet some at scale, and some percentage of my operation is also these, offshores and onshore sites. But true growth and true size in this industry really comes in the PPH market, and not in the sites where an individual can open accounts easily.
Good. And just for curiosity, I don't know if you can talk about this. You just say, but how you divide your team? Which kind of sectores? How do I say that in English? Which kind of
How it's segmented?
Yeah, exactly. How you
Right.
do this on your company?
Right. So I'm a little bit old school, and I'm a pretty big believer in coming to the office. I just have consistently seen better results with that. And then each individual in the office has different components, and some of them might blow your mind. They're not too different than a company. Some guys got to be in charge of the scheduling. Some guys got to be in charge of taking care of the tech. Some guys got to be more focused on the models. Some guys got to be more focused on getting information and news from other people. Some guys have to be more focused, which is what I sort of do, kind of run the operation and make sure that each head is sort of doing their job. So that's why I don't really look at them as, they're not really employees. Each individual sort of, I have a team of 5. Each individual is sort of in charge of a department. Each one's a manager, not really an employee. So when you're running it more like at a company level, you're really looking that each individual, yes, can do a lot of different components, can do all of the components, but you need individual mastery in each one of these things to really make an operation flow. And then I just try to meld it all together. I used to be heavily involved, especially at the beginning. It was all, bottom up betting. But today I would say my focus is in kind of putting out fires. There's always some new issue, trying to fix the issue. And then issue number 2 is just spending my time trying to grow.
Nice. I think it's not so different that we did here, so it's nice to hear. Just changing a little bit the topic, but we discussed a little bit before. But what is your perspective in bankroll management? How you do this with your bankroll?
Right. So it depends on how well you want to sleep at night, I'd say. So I started off, and this is a little bit of, bias confirmation, because I didn't know back then what I know today. But when I've been asked this question before, what my biggest regret is, it was betting too small. I was winning hundreds of units before moving up in bet sizing. And that slow process, especially the earlier you start, this is the same story with poker. The earlier you get into something, the softer the market is. Today, the market has become more difficult than it was 5 years ago, just like 5 years ago was more difficult than it was 10 years ago. So bankroll management, in reality, there is a formula for this called the Kelly criterion, where you just plug it in, and if you go full Kelly, you just go broke 30 times, but you're maximizing your growth opportunity. So at the end of the day, bankroll management is really an emotional question, unfortunately, because it shouldn't be. In reality, there's a formula for how much to bet, but in reality, most people mentally shouldn't be putting more than 1% of their bankroll on any individual play. As you grow, there's no such thing as bankroll management if you're betting small markets, because you just can't possibly get enough. once you've grown your bankroll to 6 or 7 figures. It's not possible to get these sums down. It is useful in terms of when you're taking a shot at a higher variance market, or how much of your bankroll you can allocate to betting futures, for example. I would say the rule of thumb is, and I know a lot of listeners are Portuguese, Latin America, but in America, a T-bill pays about 5.25%. So if your future is not beating a treasury bond, don't place your future bet. There's much safer ways to make money. So I'd say that's kind of like the base of determining when to bet a future or not. And mostly once you reach a certain stage, bankroll management kind of goes out the window. You can't get enough down. And bankroll management in the early stages of your career, if you want to create the most likelihood of success, is to bet smaller than what you could ever really imagine you should be betting. And most people like to give a rule of thumb as 1% of your bankroll. But look, there are times today where I'm betting 0.05% of my bankroll, 0.01% of my bankroll. So really, it's just a question of, are you an individual where you lose 30% of your bankroll in 1 week? Are you really going to be sports betting well the next week? My guess is no. So if you are a person that those emotions are going to affect you in your betting, you need to keep and that's most people, by the way. I know a lot of people think that they're not that person, but once you lose 50% of your bankroll, most people are that person where
You become it.
You become it. So in reality, I know people, they have this dream of like, boom, 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 grow, 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 I'm a millionaire. The way to get to that end goal is to start slow. Now, that's not to say that after a period of time, you do need the data to convince you to start betting more. And unfortunately for me, that took longer than it should have. I didn't really have a mentor or a guide. When I started, I didn't really know I didn't know about gambling Twitter. I didn't even really believe you could win at sports betting. One day, I was looking through, my friend was betting Brock Lesnar and in some UFC fight, and an early one. And I noticed that the market had a whole bunch of different numbers. And I said, how is that possible that there are different lines across different books? And even though I kind of poo-pooed before on a CLV, how I got started in this industry was realizing that if there are different numbers on the same event in a sporting event, there must be some mistake or some way to take advantage of it. And then I sort of went down the CLV, story. And that's how I started off understanding sports betting. So even though today I have this different relationship with closing line value, that would be how I started to understand you can win in sports betting.
That's a good point of view, because in our moment at our company, we always have to think about the emotions when you have to take a decision, because a lot of time it's more like, oh, I'll be comfortable with this bad run, so hard, or I prefer to not put so many in risk, right? Because sometimes you can't sleep well if you have taken a lot of lose, even if you know in a long run you won't.
Which means you won't be very good at betting the next day.
Exactly.
No one likes to lose money, right?
Right.
Yeah. That's a good point of view.
It's funny because I would say my office now today looks at it differently. When we lose, I like to make this joke. We're not really trying to win. We're just looking for opportunities in the market that present themselves that we know are profitable. If we lose, we lose. But that actually meant that we had an opportunity to actually express an edge.
Yes, that's a good one too. A good way to think about it.
Nice. And what is your perspective on about big stats? I don't know if that's the right pronunciation.
Big sellers, right?
Big sellers, and about the betting influencers. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I've recently tried to take a more balanced mindset to this. I believe most people have a right to earn. The question is, how much are you taking advantage of your client? So if a pick seller is able to make a client actually at the end of the day be at 0% ROI, he's probably doing them a service because they would be a losing better, most likely. Touts and pick sellers provide for groups an incredible amount of information. When I see an individual with 200,000 followers release a play, I know why and I know when a market is going to move. So this information to a larger group actually has value, even if the play itself is not good. The real issue becomes that the majority of pick sellers are effectively individuals attempting to scam clients. They are either individuals that are probably gambling addicts that weren't able to win, don't want to leave the game, but are very good marketers and networkers and are able to convince people to follow them. So while those individuals are advantageous for me because they affect the market in a certain way, those individuals can create an incredible amount of damage to effectively individuals who have most likely lost, know they can't win, and are now continuing their journey in betting in a way that's most definitely going to guarantee that they lose even more. And I would say that some of these touts and pick sellers, especially I would say that there's a large percentage of people who sell picks that know that they're not going to win, and that's an issue. There are plenty of pick sellers that actually believe that they're going to win. And look, it exists. The problem is the moment that this exists, an individual actually has value, it's going to be incredibly hard for the small timer to extract value from it. Because if the guy's stuff is good and I see it come out, my operation works, like an office. So they see it come out, we'll bet it immediately, and the market will move because we bet enough. So it's very hard to sustain an edge and sell, even if you are good. So there are so many difficulties in selling picks to overcome. It's not just winning or losing. There are downsides the moment that you are a winner, how you customer won't be able to extract value. And the truth is, even individuals who are selling good information, and it's not their fault in reality. I usually blame the consumer. A consumer needs to take accountability. They will chase the number when it's worse. So the person might say, take to minus 110. Maybe one or two clients or three clients got it at minus 110. The other individuals paying for the picks are like, well, sports betting is you either win or you lose. But by the way, it's not either you win or you lose. The VIG does matter, and they're chasing at minus 150. 1 point. Sorry, let me do try to do the Latin American decimal system. So they're saying 1.91, and these guys are taking it at 1.7, even if the pick seller says not to do that, because you're looking for the easy way out. That's usually a person looking for some quick way to just win at betting.
Regular people just think about this team will win, this team will lose. So just the 50-50 way to look. So it's not like that.
They don't understand the value, the EV and things like that. They just want to put the money on it.
And it's kind of been proven over time that individuals don't care to learn this either. But the truth is, the downside of what you just said about understanding EV, and it's not just 50-50 as the team going to win or lose. Without that component in the market doesn't exist for individuals to extract value like myself. There must be some liquidity in this market for people to take advantage of. And without individuals betting inefficiently, that doesn't exist. So it's hard. I don't want to, there's pros and cons, mostly cons to picks and pick sellers and touts. There are advantages, but I would say that it's very difficult for the starter in this business to take advantage of any of the few advantages that do exist, and they are few.
Yes, and the time will pass, and it becomes harder and harder. Every year, it's more harder than the last one to extract.
There's actually a really simple understanding to how tout basically grows. In reality, there are tens of thousands, it might be more than that, people on Twitter, for example, and other places, but let's just use Twitter or X as an example, that release picks. Now, if you understand math at all, and there's tens of thousands of people doing this, of course, a handful will actually run well and their following will grow. And this is why in a different year, you usually someone else come up, because out of the tens of thousands of people that are releasing, a few run hot and grow. And then you start seeing the ones that grew, without good quality picks, you'll start seeing them eventually shrink, because you'll see the pool of individuals following them get upset that the long run has finally been achieved and they're not actually successful. So this phenomenon of touting and seeing touts succeed mathematically is definitive that it will occur, because the market is so saturated with touts. It 100% makes sense that a few of them will run hot for 1 year or 2 years, just because of the volume of individuals attempting to, tout or sell picks.
That's right. Let me ask you about what advice would you give to a beginner bettor who wants to look at betting more seriously, and what advice would you give to a future betting partner too?
Right. So a starting bettor, I would say that the journey, and this is hard because people, they just want to be fed effectively fantasies and stories. The truth is, a beginning journey takes work. At the end of the day, if it's not hard, everyone else would do it and get rich quick. Now, there aren't that many people getting rich quick, right? So it doesn't make sense that this industry would be any different. If I gave myself advice at the beginning, I would say not to be bottom up and focus today on networking, finding the right partnerships, finding whatever it is. It also depends on the individual. You have to focus on your individual skill and develop that. If you're a statistician, financial engineer, comp sci guy, you need to focus on the model. If you're an individual that has the gift of gab, very skilled at talking, you need to figure out how you're useful to the guy who's modeling. So the beginning journey is twofold. One, it's understanding what you yourself are good at and what you yourself can succeed at. And two, understanding what your end goal is and how to achieve it. So my end goal was never to win at sports betting. My end goal was to make money from sports betting. It's just winning is the vessel for me to get to that end goal. And if you don't fully understand what you need to do to reach whatever end goal you might have, some individuals, they just want to go to a game and bet on a play with their friends and not look stupid. They want to break even over a long period of time. That makes them happy. That actually makes a ton of bettors happy. So it's up to each individual bettor to really ask themselves what they're good at, what their end goal is, and what's the path to get there. And unfortunately, the answer is never that it's easy. It's always going to be a hard path, but there's a lot of reward in this industry if you're able to answer those two questions and figure out how to take the journey to your final, destination. Sorry, what was the second question? I got carried away there.
The second was an advice too, but for future betting partners.
Right. So at the end of the day, this industry, you need to decide for yourself, do you have the ability to provide value for another individual in the industry? And if that's true, for my end, that would be, I need more places to be able to get down more. Earlier, I was saying the story of how much, what's your bankroll management, how much you should be able to bet. Most people over time, as they succeed, the journey and attempt of winning the sports bet sort of ends. Yes, you can tweak it 0.5% better, 0.25% better, but how important is that relative to increasing the amount that you can get down by twofold or 10% or 20%? So the effort of, getting better by fractional percentages doesn't make any sense. So for a group like mine, if you yourself are not able to win, and just to speak bluntly, if you're able to win, I would say you probably should not be giving accounts to other people. It's more valuable to keep them yourselves. But if you are tired of sort of going through this journey of figuring out how to win, and you're an individual that has the ability to network and has a lot of accounts and can get down. That's something I would love for other people to join the journey with me and bring me. So that's for just, you know, kind of my own, like I said before, my obligation is to myself and my partners. Their job, bring accounts. My job, provide winning. If each person can kind of fulfill their role, then we're able to succeed. That's kind of, you know, long story short, end of the day, I'm removing a facet from something, a part of something someone might not be able to do, and trying to give them value. You know, just like they're trying to give me value, I have a job to try and give them value. So in general, my value is we do fairly well, and I always need help being able to bet more and more and more.
Nice.
Yes, and as you said too, it's a two-way benefits, right? You need to be benefits and benefit someone too on this way.
Absolutely. It's all about putting people in win-win scenarios. If you make a deal where you just win, you're wrong. You're probably not winning in the long run. You're making a decision that hurts the other side. You might be losing the partnership. You might be doing something, you know, that doesn't work out for the other side. So maybe in the short term, you did something great for yourself. But real partnership, real growth, real business is when you're aligned with the person who's working with you. You win, he wins. You lose, he loses. Being on the same side and the same team, being part of a team, allows for the most amount of success. This is not supposed to be some Ayn Rand altruistic, you know, fairy tale. This is just how business works. You want each side to win. And if each side wins, you're setting yourself up for success.
Good.
Good perspective too.
And Porter, here we cover all the questions we have for you, but we want to ask you if you have any other curiosity you want to share, or any other advice, any other thing, if you want to say to our public.
Yeah,
Feel free to say.
I think at the end of the day, the most important thing in this industry is understanding your goal. And if you actually understand your goal and how to get to it, not just stating a goal, but really putting in work and effort, you should be able to achieve it if you're an individual that's listening to podcasts like this and trying to get better, you know, doing work and doing research. At the end of the day, if you have an understanding of your goal, you're going to succeed in this business. It's really not that hard to break into it. There's a lot of upside in this industry that doesn't exist in other industries. But that means that most likely you need to put in hard work and being realistic about expectations. At the end of the day, if this is an industry that you're interested in, it can work out.
Good, really good.
Então, pessoal, esse foi o nosso bate-papo aí com o Porter. Espero que vocês tenham gostado, né? Foi bem bacana aqui conversar com cabeça de um sindicato assim, né? Que começou lá atrás sozinho, como apostador, igual a maioria de vocês, igual a gente começou aqui também, na Bifront, todo mundo. E espero que vocês tenham gostado.
É isso aí, pessoal. Foi um papo bem legal. O Porter é um cara bem massa, e trouxe uma experiência bem legal dele pra gente. E espero que, como o Divinão falou, vocês tenham gostado. Não se esqueçam mais uma vez, se vocês gostaram, querem ver mais os nossos vídeos aí, só se inscrever no nosso canal, deixar o like aqui também para fortalecer. E é claro, se você tiver interesse na Brett Bra, que a gente falou bem no inicinho, só escanear o QR Code por aqui ou no link aqui embaixo que vocês vão ser direcionados para lá. Fechou? So, Porter, thank you for accepting our invite. Thank you for this conversation, and I hope you enjoy too.
Thank you guys for having me on. I appreciate it.
So, our pleasure, Porter.